The space station floated in the darkness like a frozen flower made of glass and light. It was called Harmony's Light, and it belonged to the Galactic Council. For 300 years, alien species had met here to trade, to talk, and to make peace. Today, for the first time ever, a human would walk through its doors. Ambassador stood inside the small Earthship, looking through the window at the massive station. She was 34 years old, with black hair tied back in a simple knot and calm dark eyes that gave nothing away. The United Nations had chosen her for this mission because she never lost her temper. She never showed fear. She was like a mountain that watched storms pass without moving. Her assistant, a young man named, stood beside her. He was nervous. His hands kept moving, touching his tablet, adjusting his collar, checking the time. They say they have ruled 17 star systems for 10,000 years, said quietly. They think humans are insects. Did not look away from the window. Then we will show them that insects can sting. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, stepped forward onto the station's floor. It was made of something like crystal, smooth and pale blue, and it rang softly under her feet like a bell. The sound seemed wrong to her, too light, too delicate. She understood why immediately. The gravity here was weak, much weaker than Earth. She felt like she might float away if she jumped. Her body, trained by 34 years of Earth's heavy pull, felt strange and light, like a balloon filled with too much air. The welcoming party waited for her in a large room with walls that curved upward like the inside of a seashell. There were aliens of many kinds. Some looked like giant moths with wings of blue and silver. Some were thin as sticks, with too many joints in their arms and legs. Some floated in special suits filled with colored gas. But they stood at the front. They were the rulers here. Had studied pictures of them, but seeing them in person was different. They were tall, very tall, almost 3 meters high, with bodies that looked like they were made of thin glass and pale light. Their arms and legs were long and delicate, like the branches of winter trees. Their heads were smooth and oval, with large eyes that changed color as they looked at her. The leader stepped forward. His name was, and he was the high delegate of the collective. He looked down at the way a person might look at a strange bug that had crawled onto their dinner table. So, said, his voice coming through a translator device, this is the creature from the heavy world. Bowed her head politely. High delegate, I am honored to represent Earth at this summit. Honored? Another spoke. This one was called Talik, a senior counselor. He made a sound that might have been laughter. We are honored that you survived the journey at all. We were told your species cannot function without special help. The gravity of your world is so strong that your bodies are always fighting just to stand up. The other aliens made sounds of amusement. The moth people fluttered their wings. The stick people clicked their many joints. Even the gas beings swirled faster in their suits. Kept her face calm and pleasant. We appreciate that the Council has adjusted the station's gravity for our comfort. Yes, well, Talik said, we raised it to 0.6 standard units in your section. Normally the station runs at 0.4. It was quite difficult to arrange. Your mass puts stress on our systems. More laughter. Notice that every alien in the room was looking at her with the same expression. It was not hate. It was not anger. It was pity. They felt sorry for her. They thought she was broken, damaged, a poor creature from a cruel world that had twisted her body and limited her potential. She thought about Earth. She thought about the mountains and the oceans and the endless blue sky. She thought about her grandmother who had climbed Mount at age 70. She thought about her father who had worked construction carrying steel beams on his shoulders. She thought about the athletes who ran marathons, the soldiers who marched through mud, the children who played in the streets without knowing how hard their planet was trying to push them down. These aliens lived in a world where things floated gently, where a fall meant a slow drift to the ground, where lifting anything heavy was a rare and special effort. They had no idea what Earth had made her. "Please," said, gesturing with one impossibly thin arm, "allow us to show you to your quarters. We have prepared special accommodations, reinforced floors, stronger furniture." He paused. "We would not want you to break anything." The aliens laughed again, smiled and followed her escort. She walked carefully, aware that every step felt too light, too easy. Behind her followed in silence, his face red with anger he was trying to hide. As they walked through the beautiful, delicate corridors of the station, looked at the thin walls, the graceful artwork, the furniture that seemed made of spider silk and dreams. Everything here was so fragile. She thought about her grandmother's favorite saying, "The nail that sticks up gets hammered down." But her grandmother had also said something else. "If the nail is strong enough, it breaks the hammer." Kept walking, her heavy steps ringing softly on the crystal floor. She could wait. She was very good at waiting. Earth had taught her patience along with everything else. 3 weeks passed on the station Harmony's light. 3 weeks of meetings and meals and formal events. 3 weeks of smiling while aliens laughed at her. Learned quickly that they did not just think humans were weak. They enjoyed reminding her of it. Every day brought new humiliations, wrapped in polite words and gentle smiles. The meeting rooms were the worst. They built everything for their own bodies. Their chairs were thin platforms that floated on magnetic fields, beautiful and delicate like flower petals. When sat on one during the first meeting, it made a terrible creaking sound. The whole room went silent. Then Counselor Talik called for a special chair to be brought. It was made of thick metal, ugly and heavy, like something from a factory. "We apologize," Talik said, not sounding sorry at all. "We did not realize how much substance humans carry." The other delegates laughed. They always laughed. The stairs were another problem. Buildings did not have normal stairs. They had gaps between steps, sometimes a full meter wide. They could jump these gaps easily in their low gravity. They leaped and floated like dancers, their thin bodies moving through the air like leaves on the wind. Had to walk around. She had to find elevators, ask for help, wait while they watched her with those pitying, color-changing eyes. "Such a shame," an official said one day, watching search for a ramp. "To live your whole life trapped by your own weight. How do you bear it?" Smiled politely, "We manage." Even the food was a joke. At formal dinners, the place serving dishes on high shelves, 3 meters above the floor. They reached up easily with their long arms, plucking delicacies like fruit from a tree. Then they looked at and made sounds of false surprise. "Oh, forgive us. We forgot that humans cannot reach. Should we lower it for you? We do not want you to strain yourself." Was angry all the time now. He barely slept. He sent reports back to Earth filled with complaints about the treatment they received. "This is against council rules," he said one night in their quarters. The room was built stronger than the others, with thick floors and heavy furniture, like a cage for dangerous animals. "All species are supposed to be treated equally. This is harassment." Was sitting by the window looking out at the stars. "They are not breaking any rules," she said calmly. "They are just being rude. There is a difference. They are making us look weak in front of the whole council. Every species on this station thinks humans are a joke now. How are we supposed to negotiate trade agreements when they see us as helpless children? They see what they want to see, turn to look at him, let them." Stared at her. "You have a plan." "I have patience." The days continued. The mockery continued. They held a demonstration of their traditional greeting dance. It was beautiful. Delegates leaped into the air, spinning and twisting, their bodies moving in patterns that seemed impossible. They flew without wings, carried by the weak gravity and their own light bodies. When they finished, they looked at with bright, cruel eyes. "Would you like to try, Ambassador? Perhaps a version?" "I am afraid Earth did not give me wings," said, "but thank you for the offer." More laughter, always more laughter. The worst moment came during a formal reception. The High Council had organized it to celebrate some ancient victory. Important officials from every species attended. They floated through the room on gravity platforms, drinking sweet drinks and discussing trade and war and politics. Counselor Talik found standing alone near a window. "You know," Talik said, his voice soft and almost kind, "I have often wondered about your species. You evolved in such terrible conditions, crushing gravity, thick atmosphere, constant struggle just to survive." He tilted his smooth head. "It must have been torture, every generation fighting just to stand upright, fighting just to breathe, fighting just to take a single step." Said nothing. "We evolved in freedom," Talik continued. "Light gravity, gentle winds. We could leap and fly almost from birth. We developed art and science and philosophy while your ancestors were still crawling in the mud, too heavy to lift their own heads." "Perhaps," said quietly. "It makes one wonder." Talik leaned closer, his color-changing eyes flickering with something that might have been curiosity. "What is it like to be imprisoned by your own world? To know that every other species in the galaxy moves through life easily, while you must struggle for every small victory?" Looked at him for a long moment, then she smiled. "It makes every victory," she said. Talik laughed and floated away, shaking his smooth head at the strange, heavy, foolish little human. Watched him go. In her pocket, her fingers touched the metal stylus she always carried. It was made of titanium, forged on Earth, designed to work in Earth's gravity. She had carried it with her for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. The moment was coming soon. The grand observation hall was the most beautiful room had ever seen. The ceiling rose 40 meters above the floor, covered with tiny glowing creatures that looked like living stars. Sculptures floated in the air on invisible magnetic fields. Musicians played on platforms that drifted slowly through the space like clouds. The floor was made of ancient crystal, pale blue and perfect, polished by thousands of years of careful attention. This was where they held their most important events. Tonight, they celebrated the halfway point of the summit. All the important delegates were here. The moth people with their silver wings, the stick people with their clicking joints, the gas beings in their swirling suits, and of course, the tall and graceful, floating through their beautiful hall like gods in their own temple. Sat at the head table with High Delegate and the senior officials. Her chair was the ugly metal one, of course. It sat on a reinforced section of floor, surrounded by delicate furniture that seemed to lean away from it in disgust. The dinner had lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of explaining why humanity's requests were impossible. 3 hours of polite excuses and gentle refusals. "The shipping costs alone," was saying, waving one thin hand, "would be enormous. Your goods are too heavy for our cargo ships. We would need to redesign everything. Perhaps in 100 years if your technology improves." Nodded politely and said nothing. Her stylus sat on the table in front of her. She had placed it there at the beginning of the meal. The had found it amusing. "A writing tool," Talik had said, examining it from across the table. "How charming. Humans still use physical objects to make marks on physical surfaces, like children drawing in the dirt." "It is a tradition," had replied. "We use them to sign important documents." Now, as continued his long explanation of why Earth would never be welcome in galactic trade, picked up the stylus. She held it between her fingers, feeling its familiar weight. On Earth, it weighed about 40 grams. Here, in the station's weak gravity, it weighed less than 20. But it was still made of Earth metal, dense, compact, designed to survive the forces of a heavy world. "High Delegate," said, her voice cutting through speech. The room went quiet. "I wonder if I might share something with you, a small piece of Earth culture." His eyes shifted colors. Interest, perhaps, or just amusement at what the silly human wanted to show them. "Please," he said. "We are always curious about primitive customs." Stood up from her heavy chair. She held the stylus at shoulder height, about 1.5 meters above the crystal floor. Every eye in the room watched her. "On Earth," she said calmly, "we have a tradition. When we sign an important document, we drop the pen afterward. It means the work is complete. The deal is done." Talik made a sound of quiet laughter. "How sweet! Though I imagine in your gravity, picking it up again must be quite the effort." Opened her fingers. The stylus fell. In weak gravity, a small object should float down slowly, like a feather, like a leaf. They were used to watching things drift gently to the ground. Their eyes, their brains, their whole way of understanding the world was built around that gentle falling. But this stylus was not gentle. It had been made on Earth. Every atom in its structure had been forged under crushing pressure. Its molecules were packed tight, dense, heavy, with the memory of a world that pulled everything down with an iron fist. The stylus did not drift. It did not float. It dropped like a hammer. They saw nothing. One moment the stylus was in his hand. The next moment there was a sound like a gunshot and the floor exploded. Cracks spread across the ancient crystal like lightning frozen in ice. They raced outward from the impact point in every direction, 3 meters wide, splitting the beautiful floor into a web of broken pieces. The room went completely silent. Every alien stared at the damage. Then they stared at the small metal stylus sitting in the center of the destruction, still and innocent. Looked down at the cracks, she looked up at. His eyes had stopped changing colors. They were frozen, pale and wide. "Forgive me," said, her voice perfectly calm. "Earth objects sometimes behave unexpectedly in lighter environments. I should have warned you." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The musicians had stopped playing. The floating sculptures seemed to hang motionless in the air. Standing near the back of the room, felt his heart pounding in his chest. He understood now. He understood everything. The stylus had fallen less than 2 meters, a tiny distance, a nothing distance, and it had cracked a floor that had stood perfect for thousands of years. What would happen if jumped? What would happen if she ran? What would happen if she threw something, really threw it, with all the strength that Earth had built into her bones and muscles over millions of years? They were beginning to understand the same thing. Could see it in their frozen eyes, in the way they leaned back from the table, in the sudden silence that filled the beautiful hall. They had mocked her weakness. They had her heavy body. They had laughed at the gravity that held her down. They were not laughing now. Bent down slowly and picked up her stylus. She put it back in her pocket. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "we should continue our discussion tomorrow. I think everyone needs time to think." She walked out of the hall. Her footsteps rang on the cracked crystal floor like drums of war. News traveled fast on the station. By morning, every species knew what had happened in the grand observation hall. The human had dropped a pen. The pen had cracked the floor. Such a small thing, such a simple action, but it changed everything. Noticed the difference immediately when she walked through the corridors. Before, aliens had looked at her with pity. They had smiled at her struggles, laughed at her heavy steps, treated her like a sad animal from a cruel zoo. Now they moved out of her way. The moth people pressed themselves against the walls as she passed. The stick people folded their many-jointed limbs close to their bodies. Even the gas beings seemed to swirl away from her inside their suits. They were afraid. Met her in the conference room that afternoon. His eyes were bright with excitement. "6 delegations have requested private meetings," he said, scrolling through his tablet. "They want to discuss aerospace technology. They want to learn about human sports. They want to understand human psychology." He looked up at. "They're scared of us now." "Good," said simply. "Fear is the first step toward respect." They came first. They were the moth people, beautiful creatures with wings like stained glass. Their ambassador was named something that sounded like wind through trees. She was nervous. Her wings kept folding and unfolding as she spoke. "Your launch vehicles," the ambassador said. We have studied the specifications, the thrust required to escape your planet's gravity. She paused, her compound eyes blinking rapidly. It exceeds our military weapon systems, for civilian transportation, for carrying families and supplies. Nodded, Earth holds us tightly. We had to learn to push back hard. How hard can you push? Thought about rockets, about spacecraft that burned like suns to break free of Earth's grip, about the force needed to lift a single human being off the ground and throw them into the stars. Hard enough, she said. They came next. They were the stick people, thin and fragile, with bodies that seemed like they might snap in a strong wind. Their ambassador kept his distance from, standing at the far end of the room. We have learned about human games, he said. Your children throw balls, they kick them, they hit them with sticks. His voice was careful, controlled. We calculated the forces involved. A human child can generate more kinetic energy with a single throw than our emergency acceleration systems produce. Smiled, we call it playing. The ambassador was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question that had brought him here. Your military, your weapons, what can adult humans do when they are not playing? Thought about history, about arrows and spears and catapults, about rifles and missiles and bombs, about the terrible, wonderful things humans had created by learning to throw harder, hit harder, push harder against a world that never stopped pushing back. We have learned many things, she said. Earth was a good teacher. But it was the who asked the question that mattered most. The gas beings floated in their suit, swirling with colors that seemed to show their emotions. They had requested a meeting alone, just and their ambassador. They wanted to understand. We have thought about your world, they said through their suit speakers. We have tried to imagine what it must be like, to live every moment under crushing weight, to fight just to stand, to struggle just to move. Waited. Most species would give up, they continued. They would become slow and still. They would accept their prison, but humans did not accept. You ran, you jumped, you threw things, you climbed mountains, you crossed oceans. You fought your world constantly, every moment, every day, for millions of years. Yes, said, we did. The colors shifted to something deep and troubled. What does that do to a species? To fight forever, to never rest, to know that the moment you stop pushing, your world will crush you. Thought about her grandmother climbing mountains at 70, her father carrying steel on his shoulders, athletes running until their hearts might burst, soldiers marching through mud and fire, mothers carrying children mile after mile, old men walking when their legs screamed for rest. It makes us strong, she said quietly. Stronger than we should be, stronger than makes sense. Earth tried to hold us down and we refused to stay down. We pushed back so hard that eventually we pushed ourselves into the stars. It was silent for a long time. Your species frightens us, they finally said. Not because you are cruel, not because you are violent, but because you do not stop. You cannot stop. Fighting is built into your bones. Struggling is written in your blood. Even when you are tired, even when you are hurt, even when everything says you should give up, you keep going. Nodded slowly. On Earth, we call it being human. What happens, they asked, when such a species goes to war? Met their swirling gaze. She thought about all the wars Earth had seen, all the blood and fire and death, all the terrible things humans had done to each other with the strength their planet had given them. Pray you never find out, she said. That night found her standing by the window again, looking out at the stars. They understand now, he said. They all understand. Nodded. The floor was 10,000 years old, perfect and untouched, and I broke it with a pen. What happens tomorrow? Turned from the window. In the low gravity, she felt light and strange, like she was floating in a dream. But she knew her bones were heavy. Her muscles were strong. Her heart beat with the rhythm of a world that had spent 4 billion years trying to crush her ancestors into dust. Tomorrow, she said, we stop asking for permission. Tomorrow we start demanding respect." The final meeting took place in the Grand Observation Hall. The had repaired the floor but noticed the difference immediately. The new crystal was thicker, stronger, designed for forces it had never needed to handle before. Her chair was different too. It no longer creaked. It no longer looked ugly and out of place. Someone had built her a proper seat, elegant and sturdy, fit for an ambassador of a powerful world. The room was full. Every delegation had come. The moth people with their careful wings, the stick people with their nervous clicking, the gas beings with their swirling colors, and the tall and graceful but somehow smaller than before. High Delegate stood at the center of the room. His eyes shifted through colors had not seen before. Uncertainty, perhaps even worry. "We have called this final session," announced, "to discuss the matter of Earth's membership in the galactic community." The room was silent. Everyone waited. Continued, his voice careful and measured. "The collective has reconsidered certain positions. We believe that previous assessments of human capabilities were incomplete." Kept her face calm, but inside she felt something warm growing. Victory. "The matter of trade infrastructure," said, "has been reviewed. Our engineers now believe that modifications to accommodate high-gravity cargo are possible. The costs have been re-evaluated. We are prepared to begin work immediately." Murmurs spread through the room. The other delegations exchanged looks of surprise. Was not finished. Furthermore, the collective wishes to propose an exchange program, cultural and scientific. "We believe there is much we might learn from Earth, much we have overlooked." More murmurs. The ambassador leaned forward, wings folded tight with interest. The ambassador made soft, clicking sounds of approval. Paused, and for a moment he looked almost uncomfortable. Finally, the collective formally invites Earth to apply for full council membership, not as a minor species, not as a developing world, but as an equal partner in galactic affairs. The room erupted in noise. Delegates talked over each other. Some seemed shocked, some seemed frightened, but many seemed excited, curious, eager to know more about these strange, heavy-world creatures who had been so badly underestimated. Stood up from her new chair. The room went quiet. "Earth accepts," she said simply. "We look forward to working with all of you." After the formal session ended, the delegates gathered in smaller groups to talk. Found herself surrounded by curious aliens, all asking questions about her world, her people, her culture. But one delegate hung back. Counselor Talik stood near the repaired section of floor, looking down at the crystal that had replaced the ancient original. When the crowd around thinned, he approached her. "Ambassador," Talik said, his voice was different now. The mockery was gone. "I wish to apologize." "Waited." "We did not understand what we were laughing at," Talik continued. "We saw your struggle and called it weakness. We saw your weight and called it a burden. We saw your slow movements and thought you were helpless." "And now?" asked. Talik looked at her for a long moment. His color-changing eyes settled on a shade had not seen before, something like respect, something like awe. "Now I understand that struggle is not weakness. It is training. Every moment of your existence, your world has been making you stronger, faster, harder. You are not prisoners of your gravity. You are students of it." He paused. "We evolved in comfort. We floated through life without resistance. We never had to fight for anything." "That is not always bad," said. "No," Talik agreed. "But it means we never learned what you learned. We never became what you became." He looked down at his own thin, delicate hands. "If we had evolved on Earth, we would have died. Our bodies would have broken. Our spirits would have surrendered. But humans did not break. Humans did not surrender." Thought about her grandmother, her father, all the generations before her who had lived and worked and fought under the weight of a heavy world. "We had no choice," she said. "Earth never gave us the option to be weak." "And that," Talik said quietly, "is exactly what frightens us. You are a species that has never known gentleness, never known easy victories. You come from a world that tried to kill you every single day and you conquered it. What will you do when you turn that strength outward? When you face enemies who cannot match you? When you decide to take instead of ask? Smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was patient and kind, the smile of someone who understood fear and did not judge it. We learned something else on Earth, she said. Something your world maybe did not teach you. We learned that the strong must protect the weak. We learned that power without mercy is just destruction. We learned that the greatest victory is not crushing your enemy, but making them your friend. Talik stared at her. We will not conquer you, continued. We will not destroy you. We will work with you, trade with you, learn from you, and teach you. Because that is what Earth also taught us. We survived together. We grew stronger together. And now, together, we will walk among the stars. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her titanium stylus, the same one that had cracked the ancient floor. She held it out to Talik. Keep this, she said, as a reminder. Earth's children are heavy, we are strong, we are dangerous. She smiled again. But we are also kind, we are also generous, we are also loyal. Remember both, and we will be the best friends you have ever had. Talik took the stylus with trembling hands. It felt dense and heavy in his grip, solid, real, powerful. Turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps rang on the crystal floor, stronger than before. Behind her, Talik watched her go, holding a piece of earth in his hands. For the first time in 10,000 years, he understood what it meant to look up at someone else.